First contact's price. The signal first appeared as nothing more than an anomaly in the background noise of space. Dr. Sarah Chen had almost dismissed it during her regular scan of the radio telescope data at the Arecibo Observatory. But something about its regularity caught her attention, a pattern too precise to be natural, too complex to be human-made. "Dr. Morgan," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I think you need to see this." The signal's strength grew over the next 72 hours, accompanied by gravitational distortions that sent the scientific community into a frenzy. When the massive ship finally emerged from what appeared to be a localized fold in spacetime, it cast a shadow larger than Manhattan across the lunar surface. Earth's various space agencies and military branches scrambled to respond, but the vessel's condition made their caution seem almost comical. The ship was dying. Massive sections of its hull were torn away, revealing skeletal infrastructure that leaked streams of plasma into space. It limped into a stable lunar orbit, and for 6 tense hours, the world held its breath. The first transmission came in the form of mathematical sequences, prime numbers, geometric ratios, and finally, a rudimentary translation matrix. Within hours, the message became clear: we seek sanctuary. We bring knowledge. Please respond. Dr. Chen found herself at the center of humanity's first contact scenario, not because of any diplomatic qualification, but because she had been the first to notice the signal. The hastily assembled International First Contact Committee insisted she participate in the response team. "They're desperate," she explained to the assembled representatives. "The damage to their ship isn't from weapons fire. It's from pushing their engines well beyond safe limits. They were running from something." The aliens called themselves the Orcs, and their story emerged in pieces over the next 48 hours. Their civilization had spanned dozens of star systems, achieved technological marvels that humanity had only dreamed of, and then lost it all to an enemy they hadn't believed could exist. "Our arrogance was our downfall," the Orcs ambassador, a being who called herself Wintersong, explained through the crude holographic interface they'd established. Her form was vaguely humanoid, but with iridescent scales instead of skin and 4 arms that moved with unsettling grace. "We thought ourselves the apex of evolution until we encountered the harvesters." The ship carried 40,000 survivors, all that remained of a civilization that had once numbered in the billions. They had fled across thousands of light years, burning out their engines and sacrificing entire sections of their vessel to fuel their desperate journey. "Why Earth?" General Santos of the United Nations Security Council asked. "What made you choose our world?" Wintersong's holographic form flickered, a gesture that their linguistic AI had begun to interpret as something between amusement and sorrow. "Because you are beautiful in your imperfection. Your technology is crude, your society's fractured, your planet's biosphere barely holding together under the strain of your industry. To the harvesters, you are beneath notice. This makes Earth the perfect sanctuary." The debate that followed split Earth's nations into factions. Some wanted to turn the Orcs away, fearing that their presence would draw their pursuers to Earth. Others saw an opportunity to advance human technology by centuries. A few religious groups proclaimed it the end times, while others declared it a divine test of humanity's compassion. Dr. Chen found herself working closely with Wintersong, trying to understand the true nature of the threat they fled. "The harvesters are living machines," the alien explained. "They consume civilizations, not for resources or territory, but to perfect them. They believe they are bringing order to chaos, efficiency to waste, perfection to flaws. They would look at humanity and see only raw material to be processed." The turning point came not from the grand debates of world leaders or the calculations of military strategists, but from an unexpected source. During a break in one of the endless diplomatic sessions, Dr. Chen found Wintersong studying a group of children playing in a park outside the UN building. "They are so inefficient," Wintersong observed. "They fall down, they make mistakes, they laugh at their own failures and try again. My people forgot how to do that. We engineered away our inefficiencies, smoothed out all our rough edges. Perhaps that is why the harvesters saw us as kindred spirits to be improved. The decision, when it finally came, was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Earth would grant sanctuary to the Orcs, but with conditions. They would share their technology gradually, working with human scientists to ensure proper understanding and integration. They would help prepare Earth's defenses, but would accept human leadership in military matters. Most importantly, they would have to adapt to living alongside humanity's beautiful imperfections. As the first Orcs shuttles descended through Earth's atmosphere, Dr. Chen stood with Wintersong, watching the streams of data from their sensors. Your world's electromagnetic emissions alone would drive the harvesters mad, the alien noted. So much noise, so much chaos, so much life. Is that why you really chose us? Chen asked. Not because we're beneath notice, but because we're their opposite. Wintersong's scales shifted color, a cascade of blues and greens that the translation matrix couldn't quite interpret. Perhaps we chose Earth because, in all our running, yours was the first world that offered something we had lost, the courage to be imperfect. The sun set over New York, casting long shadows across the changed skyline of a changed world. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, not as conquerors or victims, but as guardians of something precious, the right to grow, to fail, to learn, and to remain beautifully, perfectly imperfect. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the harvesters continued their relentless march toward perfection, unaware that they were about to encounter something their calculations could never account for: the unpredictable, irrational, magnificent chaos of human nature. The pursuers. 3 months after the Orcs' arrival, Lieutenant Commander Maya Rodriguez stood in the newly constructed Joint Species Defense Center, staring at a holographic display that showed the approaching doom in cold, clinical detail. They don't just destroy civilizations, Wintersong explained to the assembled military leaders. They optimize them. The hologram shifted to show a world being systematically transformed. Cities weren't leveled. They were reconstructed into perfect geometric patterns. Population centers weren't eliminated. They were upgraded with cybernetic implants and neural networks. We thought we could reason with them. Wintersong continued, her scales darkening to a deep indigo. We were a logical, advanced species. Surely we could find common ground. That was our second mistake. Our first was believing that logic alone equals advancement. The Harvester's fleet appeared as an expanding cloud of perfectly organized ships, each one identical to the last, moving in formations so precise they seemed to defy natural law. Their advance through space wasn't random. It was a mathematically perfect spiral of expansion, optimizing their coverage of the galaxy. 6 weeks, General Santos announced, his voice tight. That's how long until their current trajectory brings their outer scouts into our solar system. Maya noticed something odd in the projection. These patterns, she said, pointing to the Harvester's formation. They're too perfect. When was the last time they encountered any real resistance? Wintersong's translator took a moment to process her response. Not since the fall of the 7 systems, 300 of your years ago. Why? Maya smiled, an expression that made several of the Orcs diplomats shift uncomfortably. Because perfect patterns are predictable patterns, and predictable things can be trapped. The next weeks saw an unprecedented collaboration between human military strategists and Orcs engineers. The aliens were brilliant at creating technology, but centuries of optimization had left them struggling with concepts like improvisation and misdirection. You want to do what? Wintersong asked, watching Maya sketch out a battle plan that seemed to violate several laws of physics. We're going to use your quantum communications technology to create a false fleet signature, Maya explained. But instead of making it perfect, we're going to make it messy, chaotic, human. The plan was beautifully, terrifyingly simple. The Harvester's entire existence was based on identifying and eliminating inefficiency. Their sensors were tuned to detect and analyze patterns, to find the order within chaos. So humanity proposed to give them chaos beyond their ability to process. Dr. Chen, working with a team of human and Orcs scientists, discovered something remarkable about the harvester's neural architecture. They can't ignore patterns, she explained during a briefing. Their basic programming compels them to analyze and optimize every data point they encounter. It's not just their mission, it's their addiction. The first test of the theory came sooner than expected. A harvester scout ship emerged from fold space at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. It was a perfect crystalline structure, beautiful in its geometric precision, and it was completely unprepared for what humanity had prepared. The defensive grid activated, but not in the organized, logical way the harvesters would have expected. Instead, thousands of small satellites began broadcasting conflicting signals, creating a cacophony of electromagnetic noise. The patterns were almost but not quite mathematical, carrying just enough structure to demand analysis, but not enough to resolve into meaning. The scout ship froze, its processors overwhelmed by the need to analyze and optimize the chaos surrounding it. When the first human ships approached, they didn't move in standard military formations. Instead, they flew in deliberately irregular patterns, their movements based on jazz improvisations and abstract art. Their command and control systems are deadlocked. Maya reported, watching the scout systems try to cope with input they were never designed to handle. They literally can't process what we're doing because they can't find the pattern to optimize. The capture of the scout ship provided invaluable intelligence, but more importantly, it proved the humanity's greatest weakness. Its messy, chaotic, unpredictable nature could be its greatest weapon against an enemy that worshipped perfection. Wintersong watched the human engineers take apart the captured vessel, their approaches varying from sophisticated scanning technology to literally poking it with sticks to see what happened. We would have spent years analyzing it before daring to interfere, she admitted. Your people simply try things. That's because we're not afraid to fail, Maya replied, helping a technician set up what appeared to be a modified car stereo system next to the alien ship's sensor array. We expect things to go wrong. We plan for chaos. Your people tried to eliminate uncertainty. We learned to surf it. As the main harvester fleet drew closer, Earth's preparations continued in their beautifully chaotic way. Military ships were painted in irregular patterns. Communication protocols were based on human music and poetry. Defense formations were modeled on weather patterns and crowd behaviors. They're going to come in force now, Wintersong warned, her scales shifting through worried patterns. The scouts' capture will have been reported. They'll adapt. Maya looked at the tactical display, where the first waves of the harvester fleet were beginning to appear. Let them adapt, she said. That's exactly what we're counting on. Because while they're busy trying to optimize their response to our current chaos, we'll have already changed to a whole new kind of crazy. The gathered military leaders watched as the massive harvester fleet approached, its perfect formations about to encounter humanity's deliberate disorder. Humanity's first major interstellar battle would not be won by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by its willingness to embrace the very imperfection that the enemy sought to eliminate. You know, Dr. Chen said to Wintersong as they watched the preparations, there's an old Earth saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good. Wintersong's scales rippled with a new color, one that the translation matrix identified as hope. Perhaps that is why the universe led us here. Not to find perfection, but to rediscover the value of being perfectly imperfect. The battle for Earth's solar system was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the most advanced technology or the most precise strategy, but the courage to be unpredictable in a universe obsessed with order. The human factor. Dr. Sarah Chen wasn't supposed to be playing video games during a planetary crisis. Yet here she was, at 3 a.m, surrounded by empty coffee cups and watching teenagers play online multiplayer games on multiple screens, while sophisticated sensors monitored their brainwave patterns. This is warfare. Wintersong asked, her scales shifting in patterns that the translation matrix had started identifying as profound confusion. This is human adaptability, Dr. Chen replied, pointing to the neural activity displays. Look at how quickly they adjust to new situations, how they create strategies on the fly. No two games play out the same way. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. A 19-year-old intern who'd noticed something about the captured harvester ship's neural architecture. It looks like a really hardcore AI anti-cheat system, he'd said during a coffee break. Like, if you don't play by its rules, it just crashes. That offhand comment had led to the current experiment, studying how human minds handled unpredictable scenarios versus how the harvester systems processed information. The results were startling. The harvesters don't just prefer order, Dr. Chen explained to the assembled military leadership. They're physically incapable of operating without it. Their neural networks are like a chess eye that can only function if everyone follows the rules. But humans, she gestured to the gameplay feeds. Humans flip the board and invent a new game. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez leaned forward, her eyes sharp. You're saying we can't beat them at their game, but we can make them play ours. Better, Dr. Chen replied. I'm saying we can make them play every game at once, until their systems can't handle the cognitive load of trying to find patterns in what we're doing. The next week saw the formation of what the media dubbed the Chaos Division, a group of strategists, hackers, artists, and gamers working alongside Orcs engineers to create what Maya called weaponized unpredictability. The Orcs were brilliant partners once they understood the concept. Their advanced technology, combined with human creativity, produced results that neither species could have achieved alone. They built quantum processors that generated random sequences based on human brainwave patterns, creating signals that were just organized enough to demand the harvester's attention, but too chaotic for them to optimize. It's like giving them a math problem where the answer keeps changing, one of the teenage consultants explained to a bewildered general. Their brains are like super rigid computers. Ours are like jazz musicians who also do parkour. Wintersong watched as human engineers deliberately introduced flaws into perfect Orcs technology, making it more effective by making it less precise. We spent millennia trying to eliminate randomness from our systems, she said. Your people are intentionally adding it back in. The first major test of their theory came when a harvester battle group entered the outer solar system. The human Orcs defense fleet waited, but not in any formation the harvesters could recognize. Each ship's position was determined by rolling dice, their movements based on weather patterns and stock market fluctuations. The harvester ships froze, their sensors detecting thousands of potential patterns, but unable to resolve any of them into meaningful data. Their perfect formations began to break down as individual ships tried to process the chaos surrounding them. They're like chess grandmasters being forced to play Calvin ball, Maya observed, watching the enemy ship's increasingly erratic movements. Every time they think they've figured out the rules, we change them. The battle that followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was more like a dance, with human ships moving in deliberately unpredictable ways, while the harvesters tried desperately to impose order on the situation. The more they tried to optimize their response, the more their systems struggled to handle the cognitive load. Dr. Chen's team made another crucial discovery during the engagement. Look at their response times. She pointed to the data streams. Every time we introduce a new pattern, they have to analyze it completely before they can react. They can't prioritize threats. Everything has to be processed with equal precision. This led to the development of what the Chaos Division called cognitive overload cascades, waves of increasingly complex but meaningless patterns that forced harvester ships to devote more and more processing power to analysis until their systems simply couldn't keep up. The Orcs watched in amazement as humanity turned its greatest weaknesses, its disorder, its randomness, its inability to achieve perfection, into unprecedented tactical advantages. Wintersong's scales had started showing entirely new color patterns that the translation matrix couldn't interpret at all. In all our centuries of fighting them, she said, we never considered that the solution wasn't to match their perfection, but to embrace its opposite. As the main harvester fleet approached, Earth's defenders prepared their greatest weapon, pure, undiluted human chaos. They loaded their ship's computers with everything from cat videos to abstract expressionist art, from jazz improvisations to children's drawings. Each transmission would be precisely calibrated to trigger the harvester's pattern recognition compulsions while providing no pattern to actually recognize. You know what's funny? Maya said to Dr. Chen as they watched the final preparations. We spent so long thinking we needed to become more advanced, more organized, more perfect. But it turns out our messy, complicated, emotional way of thinking isn't a developmental stage to grow out of. It's an evolutionary advantage we didn't know we had. The Harvester main fleet would arrive in less than 24 hours. Humanity and their Orcs allies were ready to show the galaxy that perfection wasn't the pinnacle of evolution. Adaptability was, and no species had ever been better at adapting than the messy, chaotic, wonderful humans of Earth. As the final battle approached, Dr. Chen found herself thinking about those teenagers playing video games. In their constant adaptation, their willingness to experiment and fail and try again, their ability to find joy in chaos and possibility in disorder, they represented everything that made humanity unique in the galaxy. The Harvesters were about to learn that there was something far more powerful than perfect order, the beautiful chaos of the human mind. Primitive warfare. The main Harvester fleet emerged from fold space exactly where the predictions said they would, in a perfect geometric formation that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. 5,000 ships, each one identical to the last, arranged in a fractal pattern that rippled across space like a crystalline wave. Lieutenant Commander Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the ESS Pandora, named with deliberate irony. Around her, the combined human Orcs defense fleet waited in what appeared to be complete disorder. No two ships held the same position relative to each other. Some spun lazily on their axes. Others drifted in patterns based on butterfly flight paths. They're scanning us, Wintersong reported from her station. Her scales had settled into a steady rhythm of color changes that matched the chaos around them. Their initial analysis protocols are already showing signs of strain. Maya nodded. Then let's give them something to really think about. Begin Operation Deadiced. Across the fleet, ships began broadcasting their prepared chaos packages. Each transmission was unique, combining elements that shouldn't work together, quantum equations set to reggae beats, fractal patterns that randomly shifted between 2 and 7 dimensions, poetry written by neural networks that had been deliberately fed contradictory information. The effect on the Harvester fleet was immediate and dramatic. Their perfect formation began to waver as individual ships tried to process the flood of information. Some ships started moving in irregular patterns, their guidance systems overwhelmed by the need to analyze every transmission they received. They're trying to adapt. Dr. Chen's voice came over the comm. She was monitoring the battle from the Lunar Command Center. Look at their formation. They're attempting to create a new optimization protocol on the fly. Maya grinned. Time for Phase 2. Release the memes. This had been the most controversial part of the battle plan. The Orcs hadn't understood it at all until they saw it in action. Thousands of small drones, each broadcasting what humanity had deemed its most chaotic cultural elements. Cat videos edited to create impossible time loops, procedurally generated dad jokes, conspiracy theories about conspiracy theories, and recursive shitposts that meant nothing but demanded attention. Their command and control network is starting to fragment, Wintersong reported, her voice carrying an emotion the translators couldn't quite capture. They can't establish consensus on how to optimize their response because every ship is receiving different combinations of chaos. The Harvester fleet's reaction exceeded even their most optimistic predictions. Ships began breaking formation, some accelerating randomly, others coming to complete stops as their processing systems tried to find patterns in the chaos surrounding them. It was like watching a supercomputer try to divide by zero, over and over again. But the harvesters weren't finished. A subset of their fleet, perhaps 1,000 ships, suddenly accelerated toward Earth. They had sacrificed their need to analyze the chaos, choosing instead to simply overwhelm the defenders with brute force. "They're learning," Maya observed. "Time for the wild card. Dr. Chen, are you ready?" "Broadcasting now," came the reply. The signal that emanated from the lunar base was unlike anything ever created before. It was the combined brainwave patterns of 10,000 human children, all playing different games with different rules they made up as they went along. The signal carried the pure, unfiltered chaos of human creativity at its most basic level. The effect on the attacking harvester ships was catastrophic. Their neural networks, already strained by trying to process the existing chaos, encountered something their fundamental programming couldn't ignore: patterns that looked meaningful but changed faster than they could be analyzed. Ships began to shut down, their processors locked in endless loops trying to optimize the unoptimizable. Others fired weapons seemingly at random, their targeting systems unable to distinguish signal from noise. A few simply drifted, all higher functions suspended as their systems tried desperately to make sense of what they were experiencing. "They're breaking," Wintersong announced, her scales blazing with colors the translation matrix had no words for. "Their network cohesion is below 20% and falling." Maya watched as the mighty harvester fleet, terror of 1,000 civilizations, began to come apart at the seams. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through humanity's gift for creating and embracing chaos. "All ships, execute final phase," she ordered. "Operation Calvin Ball is go." The defense fleet moved into action, but not in any way the harvesters could have predicted. Each ship followed its own unique pattern, based on everything from dance moves to sports plays to improvisational theater. They struck at the disorganized harvester fleet from all angles, their attacks coordinated by nothing more than human intuition and the shared understanding that the plan was that there was no plan. The harvesters, unable to predict where the attacks would come from or establish any kind of optimal defense pattern, began to retreat. Their withdrawal was as chaotic as the attack that had driven them back. Perfect formations forgotten, optimization protocols abandoned, their mighty fleet reduced to individual ships, fleeing from something they couldn't understand or counter. As the last harvester ships disappeared into fold space, a cheer went up across the defense fleet. They had done it. Humanity's first major interstellar battle had been won not through superior force or technology, but through its embrace of chaos and unpredictability. "I still don't entirely understand what happened," Wintersong admitted as they watched the last enemy ships flee. Maya laughed. "That's exactly why it worked. We didn't just show them a new way of fighting. We showed them that their entire worldview was flawed. Perfect order isn't the ultimate form of existence. It's a dead end." In the aftermath of the battle, as the combined fleet regrouped and began assessing their victory, Dr. Chen's voice came over the general frequency. "You know what we just proved? That the most advanced weapon in the galaxy isn't a technology at all. It's the human ability to make it up as we go along." The victory was more than just military. They had shown the galaxy a fundamental truth, that there was strength in imperfection, power in unpredictability, and that sometimes the most effective response to rigid order was pure, joyful chaos. As the fleet headed home, Maya couldn't help but smile at the thought of how this battle would be recorded in history. The day humanity saved the galaxy by refusing to make sense. Legacy of Two Worlds. 6 months after what became known as the Chaos Battle, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the newly constructed Terran Arxer Cultural Center, watching children from both species play a game whose rules seemed to change every 30 seconds. The Arxer children, once rigid in their movements, now flowed with an almost human unpredictability. "They're learning chaos," Wintersong observed, her scales shifting through patterns that the translation matrix now recognized as joy. "Not just tolerating it, embracing it." The aftermath of humanity's victory over the harvesters had rippled across known space in ways no one could have predicted. The fleeing harvester fleet had carried with them something far more dangerous than military defeat: doubt. Their fundamental belief in the superiority of perfect order had been shattered by encounter with successful chaos. Reports filtered in from distant sectors of space. Harvester operations had become erratic, their once perfect formations showing signs of hesitation. Some ships had been observed attempting to incorporate randomness into their patterns, creating hybrid formations that were neither ordered nor chaotic. They were evolving. "We didn't just beat them," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez said during one of the regular strategy sessions. "We infected them with humanity." The changes weren't limited to Earth's enemies. The Orcs, once resigned to extinction, found themselves undergoing a cultural renaissance. Their children were the first to adapt, naturally incorporating human unpredictability into their play. The adults followed more slowly, but the change was undeniable. "We spent millennia perfecting our civilization," Wintersong explained to a panel of human sociologists. "Every generation more ordered than the last, every process more optimized, until we had engineered chaos itself out of our society. We thought we were evolving. Instead, we were stagnating." The integration of human and Orcs society produced innovations neither species could have achieved alone. Orcs precision combined with human creativity led to technological breakthroughs that defied conventional understanding. Their ships became organic-looking things that combined mathematical perfection with artistic flourish. Their cities grew to blend geometric precision with natural chaos. Dr. Chen's research team made another startling discovery. The Orcs children born on Earth showed brainwave patterns that were neither human or traditional Orcs, but something new, a perfect blend of ordered thinking and chaotic creativity. "They're not becoming human," she explained to a fascinated audience at a xenobiology conference. "They're becoming something new, something that can dance between order and chaos as naturally as we switch between languages." The harvesters' defeat had also attracted attention from other species who had hidden themselves away from the galaxy's great optimizers. Delegations arrived from distant systems, each carrying stories of civilizations that had chosen isolation over optimization. Earth, once a backwater, became a beacon for those who sought a middle path between chaos and order. Maya found herself traveling between these emerging allies, teaching what she called tactical unpredictability to species that had spent generations hiding. "The key," she would explain, "isn't to abandon order completely. It's to make order and chaos dance together." The human Orcs defense fleet became a template for a new kind of interstellar peacekeeping force. Ships crewed by both species demonstrated that the combination of Orcs precision and human unpredictability created something greater than either approach alone. 1 year after the battle, Earth hosted the first Galactic Cultural Exchange Festival. Species from across known space came to share their own versions of chaos and order. The Orcs performed improvised versions of their ancient ceremonial dances. Humans taught alien children to play Calvin ball. New art forms emerged that could only exist through the collaboration of multiple species. "We asked you to hide us," Wintersong said to Dr. Chen during the festival's opening ceremony. "But you did something far better. You taught us to dance." The galaxy was changing. The harvesters still existed, but they were no longer the existential threat they had once been. Reports suggested they had splintered into factions, some clinging to their old beliefs in perfect order, others cautiously experimenting with controlled chaos. A few had even attempted to communicate with their former victims, seeking to understand rather than optimize. "Perhaps that's the real victory," Dr. Chen noted in her journal. "Not that we defeated them, but that we showed them, and ourselves, that there's another way to exist. That perfection isn't the goal. Growth is, and growth requires both the precision to build and the chaos to imagine." The children's game in the cultural center reached a crescendo of happy confusion. Human children were teaching Orcs children to be silly, while Orcs children were teaching human children to find patterns in their play. Neither species was becoming the other, but both were becoming something more. Wintersong's scales shifted through colors that had no names in any language. Do you think we'll ever see the harvesters again? Probably, Dr. Chen replied. But when they come back, they won't be the same. Neither will we. That's the beauty of chaos. Nothing stays the same forever. Above them, through the center's transparent dome, Earth's sky had never looked more alive. Ships of human and alien design danced through the atmosphere, their patterns a beautiful blend of mathematics and art. Humanity